Hello, YouTube. This is Surprise Matt with Surprise Comics. Coming at you with another video. This time I'm going to go ahead and make a submission for Lords of the Long Boxes contest about your first comics. And so without any further delay, the first comic I ever owned is this Flash number 220. As you can tell, I loved it very much as a child. Growing up, my dad was always into comic books, and he did shows and had quite the collection. And this is one of the books that was in his dollar box. And whenever we wanted to read a comic, he said, go ahead and get one out of the dollar box. And so I'd grab this one. And every time I'd read it, and it'd come back a little less condition. I'd read it again, it'd come back in less condition. And eventually he didn't think it was even worth $1 anymore, so he just gave it to me. And so that's how I got my first comic. I love The Flash. This is especially when I was a kid, this is a great story. You know, we get to see the great Flash villain, the Turtle. And for those of you who don't know what the Turtle is, he's a super villain that decided the best way to beat the Flash is to move so slow that the Flash couldn't keep up with him because he's going too fast all the time. And he even went so far as to make himself a little turtle costume, and it's like one of the most ridiculous things you've ever seen, but it's just awesome at the same time. You know, if the Flash TV show ever introduces the Turtle as one of the characters, it'd be like the most awesome thing ever. Growing up, this is a comic. The other comic I'd always get to for my dad's collection was the Flash vs. Superman Treasury Edition. And I loved to read that book, but every time I read it, I got so angry. Because for those spoilers, for those who don't know, the race ends in a tie. And it makes me so mad because here you got Superman who has flight, speed, strength, laser vision, x-ray vision, and all this stuff. And all the Flash can do is run fast. And you think if there's one thing the Flash should be able to do better than Superman, it would at least be running, which is the only thing he can do. But no, it has to end in a tie every time. And every time I read it, I expected it to end differently because it just made so much sense, but it never did. Now, the first comic book I ever bought with my own money is this one right here, X-Men #1. And if you remember this comic when it came out, it's the highest out comic book in the history of comics. Allegedly, they always hear 3 or 4 different ones get thrown around. I remember I bought this cover because it was the cheapest. And I actually bought this at my first San Diego Comic-Con I went to in 1991. Like I said, my dad's a little bit of a comic dealer, and back then it was like his second year actually having his own table. Well, he didn't have his own table. Him and 4 other guys shared a table at San Diego Comic-Con, and so he had enough room for like a long box of comics and maybe a few little non-sports card type things, and that's all he did. But he'd stand there on guard on his long box ready to sell anyone who came by one of his comic books. And my dad's in Comic-Con in San Diego ever since. Now he has his own booth and he's dealing mostly in toys. He doesn't even really follow comic books anymore, but that's how I got started. I bought this at San Diego Comic-Con. You know, and I got a few other ones. I got a bunch of the junkiest X-Men titles because all I could afford when I was an 11-year-old boy was, you know, digging through all those back issue bins and trying to find things in the quarter bin, the dollar bin. And so that was the comic that I collected. I had X-Men #1. I collected them all the way up to 30 before I quit and moved on to collecting other things. Another great thing going back to my early days at Comic-Con is I remember one year, and it wasn't my first year, it was probably my second or third year, I got the chance to meet Stan Lee and get his autograph, and I got it on this little book they handed out. And you can, it's nice. It was funny because like back in those days, no one really cared all that much about getting Stan Lee's autograph. I think there was like 10 people in line when I hopped in line. I got that same Comic-Con. I went to get Todd McFarlane's autograph. I sat in line for 3 hours to get his autograph, and I got cut off like 2 or 3 spots from the end of the line from getting his autograph. And you know, it just crushed me as like a 12-year-old boy, waiting all that time to get McFarlane's autograph and coming up with nothing. But looking back, I'm so much more excited. I got this Stan Lee autograph, and he didn't just sign the book. He talked to you. He asked you who your favorite superhero was, and he'd get excited, and it was really cool to, actually meet someone that legendary and actually have him make you feel like he actually cared about you. And so it was just an awesome experience. If you go to San Diego Comic-Con now, it's just so much different, so much more larger. You couldn't ever get a chance to actually visit with a legend like that. Well, maybe you can if you know the right times and the right places. My dad tells a story about a San Diego Comic-Con he went to. It was probably 1990. And he was sitting there, and then he saw this guy just sitting by himself, doodling on a piece of paper. And he thought the guy looked real familiar, and he went up closer. And when he got closer, he realized the man that was just sitting there by himself, no one even giving a care about him, was Jack Kirby. And so he went and got everything he had that was Kirby, and went over, got his autograph, and sat down and talked with the legend for a couple minutes as he signed his books and did a little sketch. And just like these guys who were such pioneers were so underappreciated because he had all the image stuff going on at that time with all these superstar artists that were getting all this attention. So after I collected comics as a kid from 89 to about 95, 96. And even during that time, sports cards were more my thing than comic books. And so I kind of put the comic books away, put them aside. I traded away most of my comic books at that time for a bunch of sports cards. And I didn't think much about comics for about 20 years. Then a couple years ago, I'm watching one of my favorite shows, The Walking Dead, and I'm really getting into the story. And of course, as soon as you get into it, the season ends, and you gotta wait another 6 months for the next one to start. And I didn't want to wait 6 months to see what was happening next. So my next big comic purchase that started my comic book collecting all over again in a bigger, badder way than I ever expected was this phone book sized copy of The Walking Dead Compendium #1. I got that on Amazon for $25 or whatever. Took me 3 or 4 days to read the whole thing. And then so I had to get right back on the next day and order the Compendium Volume 2. And the thing about Walking Dead, it's a great comic. I love reading it. But man, can you read a Walking Dead comic book fast? You start it and then it's over before you even feel like you're getting into it. But it's so good that you keep coming back anyways. So when I restarted my comic book collecting, after I finished that, this was issues 1 through 96. So I went to the comic book store to start picking up what was coming out that time. And this comic book had just come out the day before I went. And already it was the last copy on the shelf. So I picked myself up Walking Dead 108, the first appearance of Ezekiel. Also at that same time, I picked up all the other back issues that they had available back to number 97. I picked up every other one since then. And so Walking Dead's a big part of my collection. Of course, that was my plan was I'll just buy Walking Dead. I'll save my money. I'm not going to be buying all these comic books. And then after enjoying reading them so much, I'm like, I got to pick something else up. So I started doing studies, figuring out which comic I wanted to collect. And I was looking into what was the most popular. My favorite as a kid, as I showed, was X-Men. But Avengers vs. X-Men was just finished. Some of the characters and things just seemed kind of out of whack. And I had realized just a year and a half earlier, DC had just relaunched all their titles. And every list I looked at about the top comics currently being going on, the one that always was on the top 5 of everyone's list was Batman. So I picked up the most recent issue of Batman, which is Batman 19. And I was hooked. And this is really, as far as the Batman issues go in the Scott Snyder's, this is probably one of the lower ones. And it was still just awesome. And so I went and picked up all the other ones before. I picked up everyone else since. And this got me going on Batman so heavy. I've started picking up every Batman comic I could see in the back issues. I've already completed a run of 600 to 712. I got most of the stuff in the 500s and about 100 other ones before that. And so I'm going to keep on picking up with me Batman comics and try to fill out as big of a run. You know, completing it's a pipe dream, will never happen, but I'm going to have fun trying anyways. So that's kind of the secret origins of my comic book collecting. I've been working in the toy and collectible business for several years. I started collecting comics just as a personal hobby, and slowly but surely the personal hobby started bleeding into my toy and collectible business, and so now I'm even looking for comics to flip and grade and all sorts of stuff to try to take my love of buying comics and actually not make it me broke, but maybe hopefully make me some money in the future as I start selling things and flipping things and having fun with it however I want to. So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.